is Alina Habba, Trump's senior advisor and attorney. Alina, great to have you on tonight. I want to start with Matt Gaetz. What can you tell us about the process of choosing him to be AG? Was there a lot of consultation with the Hill? Did you all bring in Speaker of the House or any of the other top Republicans?
Well, I'm not part of the transition team, and as you know, Laura, I always take my confidentiality incredibly seriously, but I'll say this. Matt Gaetz is somebody that has always been on the president's radar, has always been America first, whether the radical left likes it or not. He has been very clear about who he is, and despite the bullying, which we've seen time and time again, and frankly, Laura, I'm shocked they've only waited a couple days for more fear-mongering, which you just played for the American people. He's making selections on people that are not going to be bullied. And we have seen time and time again political people who are career politicians come in, they act like they're Republican, they turn out to be a rhino, they fold and buckle under pressure. These people, his selections, they're not that. And that might be frightening to the CNNs and MSNBCs and the people that put up charts and say that they will not respect the rule of law, the Constitution, and the separation of powers. But they've got another thing coming. We need to respect the process. The president has to respect the people he's putting in these roles. And frankly, I do. I think he's made great decisions. I'm excited for what's to come. I think America spoke loudly that they were excited for what's to come on November 5th.
Now, Alina, John Brennan, one of our personal favorites, who lied, the former CIA director who lied about Hunter Biden's laptop, had this to say about Tulsi Gabbard. Watch this.
Tulsi Gabbard has taken actions and made statements over the past several years that really raise serious questions about her common sense, her judgment, as well as her political sympathies. Cozying up to Putin as well as to meeting with Bashar Assad, I think really does show that she doesn't have the type of perspective that is needed for somebody who's going to head up these 18 intelligence agencies.
Alina, so now if you have questions about the progress of the war in Ukraine, our priorities in the war in Ukraine, you are a pro-Putin apologist.
And
that's
also,
where we are today.
Well, it's fear-mongering. Also, Laura, all I know is I want people that know these people. I want people that know how to handle themselves. Also, let's not forget that these are women, men that have military background, or, Pete Hegseth, for instance. They'll knock them no matter what. Tulsi is a strong woman. Frankly, she was independent. She was not even a Republican until recently, but they turned her because this is truly the party of radicalization. This is not the party of America first. She is part of the party where we have welcomed strong women, and she's going to crush it. I know she will. And, he's got some nerve, as you said, Mr. hiding the laptop. He's got some nerve, and he's probably afraid of accountability. To be honest, I think that's what it is.
Consider the source of the criticism. Alina, is there any circumstance under which, do you believe, after working with President-elect Trump for as long as you have, that he would consider pulling a nomination if he thought it was doing greater damage to his fantastic momentum that he obviously has?
President Trump, I don't think, would nominate somebody and put them on the front running if he wasn't going to stand behind them. As somebody who's worked with him extensively, these are not people that are new to politics. These are not people with new dirt and information. He knows who these people are. He's gotten to know them closely, so have I, and they are amazing people. He's not being bamboozled in any way, and he doesn't also buckle to pressure, and we know that about President Trump. He'll fight for his people, and I think you should expect that. He's selecting people that he knows are going to do the job correctly. And frankly, we do have the Senate. And I'm sorry, but the American people voted this, and they voted for change. And that's what we're going to have. And it's going to be the most epic change. He's got a lot to fix from the damage that we've gone through, and we have to do it quickly.
Turn the rocks over, Alina. Everyone needs to see what's underneath the rocks. Exactly. No, turn the page. Alina, you also said you were taking yourself out of the running as press secretary. A lot of people thought you would be a fabulous press secretary. Any other thoughts about the administration and your role?
I honestly, that's between me and President Trump. And you know what I will say? The love I got from that.
Oh, shucks. Tell us.
Oh, come on, Laura. You know me better than that. I'm so honored, honestly. I've been showered with love, but that was not a position I wanted, and I want the people that do want it to have their fair shake at it. And I know the people that are up there, and they're going to be great, and they're going to crush it. It's going to be awesome.
All right, Alina, thank you very much. Great.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.